Today, we're diving into a medical mystery. See, prostate cancer is often a treatable disease, but for some people, something happens. It transforms, it evolves, and it becomes a killer. So we're going to follow the clues as scientists work to uncover its deadliest secret.
So, this is the big question, right? When a standard, effective cancer therapy suddenly stops working, what is actually happening inside those cells? What makes them so smart, so dangerously resilient? Well, a team of researchers at Emory University decided they were going to find out. And the story really kicks off with this one number, 20%. Now, that might not sound like a huge number at first glance, but when you're talking about advanced cancer, it represents a really terrifying life or death shift.
Because that 20%, that's the number of patients whose disease literally evolves. It changes its entire identity, becoming totally resistant to the standard hormone therapies that used to work. And that leaves doctors with almost no effective ways to fight it.
And this brings us to the real villain of our story, this cancer's deadly disguise. It's a transformation so complete that it actually earns itself a whole new name. It's called neuroendocrine prostate cancer, or NEPC for short. You can think of it like the cancer leveling up into a supervillain. It sheds its old weaknesses, develops brand new strengths, and most importantly, it develops an immunity to the very drugs that were designed to kill it. You know, this quote from the study's lead author, Dr. Jinden Yu, just hits the nail on the head. She calls it a new beast, and that's exactly what it is. The therapies that used to work are now basically firing at a target that isn't even there anymore. The cancer has fundamentally rewired itself.
So how in the world do you fight an enemy that can just change its identity on the fly? Well, first, you have to figure out how it pulls off the trick. So let's get into the investigation and see how these scientists started mapping the cellular crime scene.
And this right here is where the breakthrough really begins. Using some seriously cutting-edge tools, these researchers created the first ever 3D map of this whole transformation. It let them watch for the very first time as a prostate cancer cell rewired itself from the inside out.
So think of this map as a super high-tech surveillance system for DNA. It's not just taking a picture, it's tracking how the DNA physically folds and loops around itself inside the nucleus. And by doing that, it reveals exactly which genes are getting switched on and which ones are being shut down to orchestrate this whole deadly change. Now, this 3D map didn't just show them that a change was happening. It revealed who the culprits were. The investigation uncovered two key accomplices in this cellular heist, a pair of proteins working together. And here they are. Think of them as a criminal duo. First up, you've got FOXA2. It's the pioneer, or maybe the locksmith. Its job is to go in and pick the locks on parts of the DNA that are usually tightly coiled and totally sealed off. Once FOXA2 opens those regions up, its partner, NKX21, comes in. This one is the hacker. It gets into those freshly unlocked sections and starts rewriting the cell's code, reprogramming its whole identity into that aggressive NEPC form. But here's the thing. The locksmith and the hacker couldn't pull off this transformation all on their own. They needed one last critical element to complete the job. They needed a way to flip the master switch. Right, so even after the DNA is unlocked and the new instructions are all written in, nothing actually happens until they get a jolt of power. These new cancer-causing genes, they're called oncogenes. They just lie there, dormant, until something comes along and provides the energy to turn them on. And that power source turned out to be a pair of enzymes, CBP and P300. These are the master switch. They provide that final essential jolt of energy that activates the new NEPC identity and sends the cancer into absolute overdrive. So it all boils down to this simple but deadly three-step process. First, the pioneer, XA2, unlocks the DNA. Second, the reprogrammer, NKX21, rewrites the code. And finally, the CBP/P300 enzymes activate the whole thing. Pioneer, reprogram, activate. That's the secret formula for this deadly transformation. You know, in every good detective story, uncovering the villain's secret is the first step to taking them down. By mapping out this entire process, these researchers didn't just solve a mystery, they found a weakness. And that finally brings us to a real glimmer of hope. So here is the breakthrough, the big aha moment. If the entire transformation depends on that final flip of the master switch, well, what if you could just block that switch? What if you could stop it from ever being flipped?
That's exactly what scientists realized they might be able to do. And it turns out a drug called CCS1477, which is already in clinical trials, does precisely that. It's designed to specifically target and block those CBP/P300 enzymes. It doesn't matter if the DNA is unlocked or reprogrammed, if you cut the power at the source, the transformation can't be completed. And in lab and animal models, it actually worked. It halted the growth of these NEPC tumors. So let's just recap the whole story here, laid out nice and simple. The problem? A super aggressive, drug-resistant cancer. The mechanism we uncovered? That final activation step, powered by the CBP/P300 enzymes. And the potential solution? A drug, CCS1477, that directly blocks those enzymes, effectively cutting the power to the cancer's transformation. And this leaves us with a really fascinating and powerful thought. This research wasn't just about finding one new drug target. It was about understanding, at a deep level, how a cancer evolves to survive. Which really raises the question, could the future of fighting this disease be less about brute force and more about outsmarting a cancer's incredible ability to change and adapt? Could that be the real key to finally defeating it?